Welcome to the STEAM Discovery Project. I just want to briefly introduce myself and welcome you all in. My name is Adrienne Prudzinski. I am the founder and program director for StarTech Global Academy, which is a nonprofit dedicated to STEM diversity. We're the ones bringing you the STEAM Discovery Project today. I'm from Seattle, born and raised. I graduated from Garfield High School. I joined the Air Force ROTC and studied mathematics at the University of Washington, which was actually not a good match for me. I transferred out of the program and discovered my real passion. I became an entrepreneur, and here we are with our latest project. The STEAM Discovery Project is a series of free workshops for teens to discover STEAM education and career pathways, plus the resources to get you there, including careers, scholarships, tutoring, mentors, and more. Now you may be wondering, what exactly is STEAM? Well, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It's STEM with the addition of arts. Now, when we say arts here, we mean the ways in which technology and STEM are used in the arts. For example, this presentation was made on a digital design app. Part of what we hope you'll find interesting today is all of the unique ways that STEAM is used in different types of careers. Now, before we dive in, I want to cover some quick Zoom etiquette for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom. If you look on the bottom left corner of the Zoom window, you should see your microphone. It has a line through it right now. It means you're muted. We'd like everybody to go ahead and stay on mute into the question and answer part, but you are welcome to use the chat feature. It's on the bottom of your Zoom window also. It'd be great if you could click on that chat icon now. And when the chat box opens up, go ahead and say hi, and it lets us know the chat is working for us. Now for your view, at the top of your window on the right is the view icon. There's a side-by-side speaker view, which helps you see who's speaking best. I have that circled here. There's also the standard view, which shows the presentation and participant cameras on the top, and then the gallery side-by-side view, which shows the presentation and cameras on the side. Last but not least, just a friendly reminder that we are recording the sessions and translating them into other languages. So community members who are not here can still get all the awesome info. Plus, if you know someone who might be interested but couldn't attend the workshop, you can always share the recording with them once we post it. Now, for those of you at the location, the South Shore today, hopefully you got some free pizza. You may also know that the first 10 participants to sign up and complete the workshop's exit survey win a $25 Amazon gift card. We also have more gift cards for the Q&A portion. We're going to email those gift cards to you, so we do need your email address. If you did not sign up online where we get your email address, you can go ahead and put your email in the chat now. And that lets us know you're here. We'll match it with the exit survey, and you will get your Amazon gift cards. For those of you that don't win Amazon gift cards, you can always pick up swag at the location, which is South Shore today. But like I said, we have plenty of Amazon gift cards to give away in the Q&A panel portion as well. Now, on to our agenda. We've already covered the intro and Zoom etiquette. Our other topics are why STEAM with our workshop lead, our STEAM stories with our special guest speakers, our question and answer panel with our special guest panelists, and then we'll finish with that very brief exit survey I mentioned earlier, which helps us improve the workshop. It lets us know if you want to be matched with a STEAM mentor. And it also helps get grants to keep the workshops free so we can keep offering these and keep offering free Amazon gift cards. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mila, our workshop lead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mila Hightower. I'm a pre-med student studying at Xavier University in my senior year. I am from Seattle, born and raised specifically in South Seattle. I actually went to South Shore for K through 6th grade, and then I went to Washington, 7th and 8th, and then I graduated from Cleveland High School in 2016. I actually transferred to Cleveland originally for basketball, but Cleveland is a STEM high school, if you didn't know, and they make all of their students do a life sciences track or an engineering design track. Fortunately, I was placed in the life sciences track and I fell in love with it. And it took about 2 semesters to realize that's what I wanted to do for my career. So why STEAM? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different STEAM careers, and we're going to explore some of those with you today. There are also many different pathways to a career in STEAM, and you can choose the one that fits you best. Something to note is that in the US, the STEAM jobs are growing at twice the rate of non-STEAM jobs. So there will be jobs waiting for you in STEAM when you finish with your schooling. Also, in the US, the average pay for STEAM jobs is twice as much as the average pay for non-STEAM jobs. So let's play a little game. When you hear STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, what careers come to mind? Let's see what careers we can guess. I'll give you guys a minute to think of some, and you can use the chat box to enter your guesses. Okay. All right. Thank you for the guess. So another thing to note is that STEAM is very diverse. It is not just, scientists and engineers. It's so much more. On the images on the left, you'll see a man and a woman in a biotech lab. Very sciencey. On the bottom, there is a man and a woman in a music studio, and they're using DJ mixing equipment. These are both STEAM careers. Now, like I said earlier, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of STEAM careers, and today we just wanted to highlight a range of careers to get your wheels turning on what's possible. So, here are some science careers based in health and wellness. You have dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, and medicine. You could be a lab technician, excuse me, counseling and psychology, physical therapy and fitness. Other science pathways include the nature and life sciences. You have ecology and land stewardship, zoology, forestry, environmentalism, or you could become a veterinarian. On the technology and business side of things, you have game development, website or app development, IT systems and security management, DevOps and business operations, or digital marketing. For media and arts, you could become a graphic designer, a multimedia artist, a digital animator, or a multimedia creative director. On the technical art side of things, you could become a director of photography, videography, visual effects technician, or an audio engineer. Now, another really cool thing about STEAM is that there are multiple pathways to get into the career that you want. Virtually all careers are going to require a high school diploma or a GED, so that's your first step. With 1 to 2 years of education after high school, that will usually get you a certificate or an associate's degree. 4 years will get you a bachelor's degree, and 6 to 12 years will usually get you a master's or doctoral degree. 12 years sounds probably like a long time, but that time is going to pass anyway. So where do you want to be in 12 years? What do you want to be doing? How do you want to be spending your time? The key is to figure out what you're interested in, see what careers there are, and start down the path. And hey, don't worry about how to pay for your education. There are always scholarships, grants, and student loans that will help you cover the cost. And at the end of the workshop, we will connect you with a resource guide that will help you with tutoring, scholarships, and more. Another great thing to note about STEAM is that the jobs pay pretty darn well. We like to call it a family wage, meaning you can live on it and support a family. Each of those career fields that I mentioned earlier has a way to get into it with a shorter path, a medium path, a longer path, and usually the longer paths are going to pay more, but not always. There are some 2-year paths like information security and business operations that will pay as much as the 6 to 12-year paths. We're talking like 25 to 45 an hour, but it really depends on the career. So, key takeaways to take from this presentation, this workshop. First, that there are many diverse STEAM careers, all the way from engineers at Boeing or SpaceX to life sciences or multimedia artists. Second, It's important to remember that there are multiple pathways into each career field. On average, careers in STEAM are going to require 1 to 12 years, but remember the time is going to pass anyway. So where do you want to be? And third, if you put it all together, it's about finding something you're interested in, choosing a pathway, and letting that lead you to career in STEAM. And lastly, it's important to note that most jobs are going to have ongoing training and education, so you can always switch pathways or careers if you change your mind. Now, before we get to our guest speakers, I wanted to take a quick moment to show you the resource guide that I mentioned. We are creating a guide for each workshop location, excuse me, with a list of local resources, including advising, tutoring, scholarships, computer labs, study spaces, free Wi-Fi, food, workshops, and so much more. You can find it via the link at the bottom of this page, startechga.org/guide. If you ever forget it, you can always just go to steamdiscoveryproject.org, and the resource guide links will be there in the menu. Here's an example of what the resource guide looks like. You can click on the location of your choice, and it will take you to a customized list of support resources curated just for you. Now, we have about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer for our guest speakers before we move on to our Q&A panel. Our first guest speaker is Miley Hadley. She is a nonprofit leader focused on equity in education and STEM.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Let's see. Seeing the STEM with purpose, just a single slide? Or is it showing my presenter view?
It's showing your presenter view, hun.
Okay, let's change that. Sorry. There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about how I took my love of math and my degree in engineering to open doors for me and be in a career that I look at STEM or STEAM with purpose. So a little bit about me. My name is Miley Hadley. I'm the executive director at a nonprofit, so similar to Adrian, working in the nonprofit space. And my work is to inspire kids to love math. And if you haven't heard of the term executive director, it's essentially the CEO of a small organization. And my background in terms of how I got here, I grew up in the Tacoma, Lakewood area with my mom and my brother. And when I hit high school, me and my mom were not exactly getting along, and she kicked me out of the house between my sophomore and junior year. And I've been on my own and working ever since. I moved around with family members, as well as friends, and then eventually found like a job as a live-in nanny while I was in high school. So not the easiest journey to STEM, but like that was my foundation. And when I was in high school, I was thinking a lot around, what's the best way to support myself? And then is it even possible for me to go to college? And I got a job at a grocery store. And it's interesting because there was income possibility there. There was insurance, there was a retirement plan, and I easily could have made a career for myself there that would have supported myself pretty well. But many of my coworkers, they were older and they did have families and this was their career, but I wasn't challenged. And my coworkers weren't very motivated, and they really didn't do much, but just, I don't know, they just didn't do much. They weren't terribly motivated. And I learned really quickly that that wasn't my path. I thought about childcare because I was a nanny, but being like on and in front of people all the time also wasn't something that I thought I could do long term. So I decided I need to figure out how to get into college. My grades weren't very good in my junior year, so I actually did Running Start. So I took some college credits while I was in high school. It allowed me to work more hours and flexibility, which I needed, and I had a lot of independence. And I realized I knew that I loved math, but I'd failed pre-calculus 2, maybe even 3 times. But even though I really loved math, I was like, oh, what can I do? What can I do with this? So my brother was in college at the time. So I reached out to him. about ways to get to college. And he connected me with different folks. And he said, well, if you like math and you're interested in engineering, I have some folks I can introduce you to. So I got introduced prior to starting college to both college students as well as advisors. And I worked my tail off and I got admitted to the University of Washington. And since I'd already taken some college level math classes and an English class, I didn't have to do the placement tests, which scared me at that time. And I was able to start in calculus, even though I failed pre-calculus multiple times. And it also got me connected to just different communities within the institution. So when I started, I was like, quote unquote, on track because I started at college level math. And I got connected with kind of three key groups: the National Society of Black Engineers, Women in Engineering, and the Minority Engineering Program. And what these did, they took this really large campus, and you know, it's Seattle, it's the University of Washington, so it was predominantly white campus, and made it really small. And I was surrounded by people who looked like me, both women and people of color, who were interested in engineering, who may or may not have had any exposure or background to what that meant. So it was pretty awesome from a support group perspective. And so with that, I was encouraged to stay with engineering, even though my grades weren't all that wonderful. And I got into the electrical engineering program. And I did that because I was interested in software and I liked math, but computer science wasn't really my thing. And electrical engineering is sort of a way to sort of toy with software, but do some other pieces. So I focused in an area of communications and signal processing within electrical engineering. And basically, it's data that can be converted to any input. Electrical engineers likely worked on it in some point. So Mila showed the DJs earlier and the equipment they were working on that would have ran past an electrical engineer at some point to make sure that that sound quality and the way that signal is going through is hitting right. Also, you can see different things on the screen here: GPS, medical imaging, surveillance and tracking, and targeting for like military use cases, most video games, because all that imagery and all that graphics is signal processing, cell phone technology, Bluetooth, that's all electrical engineering and signal processing. So it had a ton of applications. And I was lucky enough to get a job at an engineering company while I was still in college. And I didn't really enjoy it. Like, I liked the freedom of working. I got to work at 10 in the morning, and I left at like 7 or 8 whenever I felt like it. But I was sitting in a cubicle, and I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. And the companies that seemed the most interesting were like startups, and that was a lot of work, more work than I wanted. And so I thought, oh, maybe I can use my engineering degree, and I like math, so maybe I'll be a teacher. So I looked at some student teaching. I was like, nope, I don't want to, I don't want to be a teacher. I didn't really want to work as an engineer. So I thought about the fact that I really loved working with community and working with youth. So I tried to find ways to put all of those interests together, and I found myself in the nonprofit and education sector. And so I spent like the past 20 years building programs for children and teenagers and young adults. The three things that I worked on that I really enjoyed that were very specifically in the STEAM world was the University of Washington Tacoma has a math science leadership program. It starts as a summer program for from 7th grade through high school. I started that, I think, 15 years ago, and it's still going. I worked with a statewide organization called Washington STEM, and that was cool because we gave money to organizations like this so that they can do more work. And then I did a statewide algebra challenge where we were teaching kids as early as kindergarten how to do algebra through video game play. And we did some really great partnership there. So those are the kinds of things that I was able to do throughout my career because I had an engineering degree. These opportunities were opened up for me. And so what I do is I run a nonprofit to inspire kids to love math. And I've been able to do that because of my love of STEM and STEAM, and just making connections like this. So that's me. I don't know if we do like questions or anything like that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okie dokie. Our next speaker is Jael Bab. My page is I'll go ahead and press again. Take it over.
Okay.
Myself.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, it's been a minute since I've done a PowerPoint. So. All right, my name's J.L. Babb, and what I do is biopharmaceutical validation consulting, which is a contract-based equipment testing role and a lot of technical writing. And that's kind of split up into, my job is kind of split up into two separate parts, which is validation and consulting. So you can have validation engineers and also consultants. And the validation part of it is just testing equipment that's used in manufacturing pharmaceuticals. So medicines, dog food, lotion, stuff like that. And the job is mostly writing reports, protocols, procedures, and then testing those procedures and testing that equipment and the facilities that are being used. So all of the medicines and really anything that you would buy from a store that isn't food has probably seen some sort of validation before getting to you, particularly things that you put inside of your body, which have the most complicated regulations surrounding them. So this job is extremely important and also not really that well known, like a lot of important jobs. So you can just be a validation engineer and work in one city, but what I do is I contract. I'm a consultant. So that means that I don't really work for one company in particular. I just mainly go around the country. Sometimes there's contracts outside of the US, and they're usually for a month to maybe 1 or 2 years. So that's a lot of independence since you get to travel around a lot, but there's not really an opportunity to settle down. So it's perfect for somebody pretty young. And I'm 27, so I'm pretty young still. So here's a couple of pictures that I've attached here. This top one is what a biopharmaceutical manufacturing plant looks like, or a lot of manufacturing plants look like. Just a bunch of tubing, a bunch of wires, a lot of metal, and people in uniforms. And so all of these pieces of equipment, everything that is being done in this room, we need to make sure that we're able to control it to the very best of our ability and to expect a certain outcome and to be able to reproduce that outcome over and over. So this is more of a really complicated system that you're looking at, a group of systems, but below here, there's some of the more simple things that we work on, like pumps and centrifuges, which are used in a lot of medicine manufacturing to transport fluids or to separate fluids. And here's a couple other smaller instruments. This one in the top left is a bioreactor, sorry. And so that's also used for cultivation of cells, like just growing cells and separating them. And this one right here in the bottom right is a really, really cold freezer that goes down to, I think, negative 150 degrees Celsius. So there's some pretty cool stuff that you get to work with when you consider a career in validation. So where I started off, I'm not actually from the Seattle area. I'm here on a contract that's been going on for about a year now. So I was born outside of the US and only lived there a couple of months, don't really remember it. And then I went to New Jersey and moved to Texas for high school and then to Oklahoma for college. and eventually ended up here through, I think this is my third contract. And I first discovered an interest in STEAM in elementary school, or possibly earlier. Both of my parents worked in STEAM fields. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a computer scientist. And that definitely influenced, I guess, my interest in math and science. And coupled with that, I ended up picking a lot of hobbies that had to do with science and just kind of nerd stuff, like collecting rocks and classifying them, or looking at things under the microscope and creating slides, and just basically doing a lot of things that you might do in a lab in middle school or in high school. And I've just been doing that from very early on, and nothing really changed. So I stayed in STEAM. So when I eventually got to high school, I went to a science and math high school, which also really kind of kept me insulated to science and technology. And it's not totally necessary for a career in STEAM. A lot of the people that you talk to don't really go to these specialized high schools or anything, but it definitely does help at least narrow down the things that you're not interested in. So for instance, I found that I really hated physics and chemistry, ironically, because I became a chemical engineer. But it did definitely help to choose a major in college a little bit. So when I went to college, I went to OU. I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. So I just kind of went into a chemical engineering major, and through that major, I was able to hook up with a program, a mentorship program, kind of like STEAM, that was at OU, called the Multicultural Engineering Program. And that was, at the time, the only diversity and inclusion program on the campus. So it was extremely important, especially moving from Houston, which is really mixed, to like small town Oklahoma, which is not mixed at all. And upon graduating college, I ended up going to work for a pharmaceutical company in manufacturing. And I found that it wasn't what I wanted. I didn't feel that the things I learned in college were being put to use in that environment. And I wasn't really happy with where things ended up. Like I said, I never really existed outside of STEM, never really explored what my options were. I just went with the first thing and ended up in a job that I didn't really like. And so that's kind of what takes us to right now. I didn't like my job. I ended up making connections through it though, and ended up being able to move into a position that I currently have right now, where I travel around the US and validate equipment. And so in school, didn't really have a lot of direction, didn't want to do anything, ended up in a lot of situations where I didn't feel like I was good enough. And I never asked anybody about it. I'm sure that they would have told me that I was doing just fine, because I mean, everybody there was kind of struggling. Nobody really had it figured out, but I put it upon myself to I guess basically just lie to myself about my capabilities and not really test myself or apply myself like I should have. And so that kind of leads to a couple of revelations. So I tried to focus on doing my best when I hit a wall, and I just tried to keep putting one step in front of the other to eventually get to a place where I could be happy with what I was doing. And once I opened up to people about the problems that I was having, I got a lot of support. And that's definitely very important. And I learned possibly one of the most valuable things one of the most valuable, I guess you could say, mottos is that there's no stupid questions if you're trying to understand something. So there's a lot of times when you might feel like an idiot. Like I definitely felt like an idiot in a lot of my classes in engineering in college, but the smartest people in the room, what I perceive to be the smartest people in the room, where I was asking these really simple questions that you would have expected that they would know. And they were the ones who ended up really learning what was being taught. And so there's a couple of reasons why I chose my job that I went over earlier. So there's a lot of freedom. Like I said, you're paid hourly rather than salary. So you get paid for as much as you work. So if you don't want to work, or if you're feeling a little bit stressed out, since it is a very stressful job at times, you can take a couple of days off and come back to it. Since you don't live anywhere technically, you're very free to travel around and just kind of get a sense of where you might want to be physically. But the trade-off for that is that you can't settle down very well because you're always just out and about on the wind. And so that kind of informs the pros and cons list that I have here. I got to go to a bunch of different places in my first couple of years of contracting. Just being able to go to different cities on weekends, or just living in a completely new place for a year or two. Every contract is something new. It's always a new experience with whatever you're getting into. And you are still helping people, even if you're not communicating directly like a doctor or a nurse would. You're still within that circle of healing people. And so what I don't like about my job is the instability, the limited opportunities for advancement. There's not really any need, since they're just putting you into a company every year or so. And it's at times it can get a little bit boring and repetitive. So to finish off, some lessons that I learned over the years through, just trial and error for the most part, since I didn't ask for help. Don't let people discourage you, including yourself, especially yourself. Be aware that failure is part of the process. It's not every time that things just go completely well. It's not even most times, in my experience. And everyone is struggling through the same things, even if you're not aware. If you make a mistake, or if you say something that you think people might think you're dumb for, they're not going to remember it a week later. So just go ahead, ask all the questions that you wanted to. And it's never too late to find and pursue your dreams. I waited until I was out of college to really think about what I wanted to do. And I still got to a place where I was satisfied. And it's never too early to start working on your goals. Like Mila said, the time passes anyway. So you might as well just work towards your goals with every action that you take in the day. And as a conclusion, this slide is about what my future plans are. Don't really know. There's still a lot of possibilities, a lot of places where you can go with what you've learned. And I don't think I ever will know, but I think the journey is what's important. Trying to get to a place where you can really be happy. And as the very last slide, I just put in this quote. It's a quote that got me through some pretty difficult times, a lot of finals weeks. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it is gone and past, I will turn the eye to see its path. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And that's by Frank Herbert. Thank you.
Quote. Thank you. I gotta remember that one. Okay, so we have a good amount of time for our Q&A. So we will now transition to our Q&A period. If you ask a question, you can win a prize. To get the ball rolling, we have some free giveaways for the first couple of questions asked. If you're in person at South Shore Teen Life Center, we have some t-shirts and more Amazon gift cards that we have plenty to give away while supplies last. So if you have any questions, I'm not sure if the my view is a little off, so I can't really see if anyone's raising hands, but you can type any questions you have into the chat box, or type question and we'll call on you. However you want to do it, just let us know. We have about 15 minutes or so for questions. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them up. Let's see. Oh, we already have one in the chat box. How to do this. Can you clarify what you mean by this, Elijah? To get the ball rolling. Oh, and let me announce our Q&A panelists. I forgot to do that. So first up, we have Reese James, who is an immunologist in biotech. Next is Bobby Brzezinski, a biopharmaceutical manufacturer. Bethany O'Feely is a computer engineer and leader in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Miley Hadley, of course, our guest speaker, nonprofit leader focused on equity and education in STEM, and JL Babb, who is a biopharmaceutical equipment qualification specialist. So to get the ball rolling, since we haven't heard from Reese, I would love to know what a typical day like is in your job.
Part of my day is usually spent in the lab. I'm more of a traditional research scientist. So the company I work for makes cancer drugs, and I specifically work on immuno-oncology drugs. So a lot of it is sort of traditional biology lab stuff. And then the rest is the part that most people probably don't think about. It's a lot of meetings and reading and sort of all the other stuff that goes along with running experiments. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
You have to get ongoing training for your job?
Maybe not traditional, I guess, ongoing training. But in this field, I think you sort of always have to be training yourself. A big part of it is maintaining, I guess, knowledge on the current, literature and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reading papers, a lot of designing experiments, a lot of meetings, I guess, to talk about these types of things.
I have a tiny bit of research experience, and I've never read more in my life than the summer that I did research. And I have research again this summer at the same institution, and it's virtual. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to look, but I assume I'm going to be doing even more reading than last summer since I can't actually get in the lab. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bethany, I would love to know, I had a good question here. What kind of problems do you deal with in your position?
What was your question again?
What kind of problems do you deal with in your job?
Wow. Okay. In my last job as an engineer, I dealt with connectivity, and the problems were a laboratory could not connect to a hospital. That was my type of problem, and it was a technical problem, and I would have to chase people down and dig in a bunch of virtual private networks and open up interfaces and type war games type things in and get it going again. Now, as diversity and inclusion, the type of problems I deal with. Anytime an employee has dealt with some form of inappropriateness, discrimination, someone saying something racist, they're going to come to me. as a safe place, and then I go help them handle it. So that's one kind of problem I deal with that's not really great. But I'm glad to be there for them. I can advocate. I can immediately say, let me go talk to this vice president and we'll get your problem handled. And so at least I have power to make somewhat of a difference. The other type of problem I deal with is setting expectations for people and ignorance, I would say, on certain things. So then I will need to plan something a certain way in order to be sensitive to a certain ethnicity of people. And then the ignorance I deal with, I will have to explain to people why, and they won't get it. They'll be like, well, it seems like we should do it this way, though. I'm like, well, if you do it that way, you lose all of your Indigenous and Black employees, and they will think you are full of it. And I have to find a really like cool way that's not offensive to say things like that. So the problems I deal with is the problems that probably any ambassador or diplomat deals with, because I'm bringing together different kinds of people and helping them to understand each other better and make plans together on how to work together better.
Miley, I was wondering how, or how to frame it. Realistically, if you could change something about your job, what would you change?
That's a really good question. What would I change? Well, one thing in the nonprofit world that I didn't have to deal with when I was in the STEM and STEAM world is raising money. So that is one thing that I would change, is that folks who care about work like this, that they would just give to it and wouldn't have to put a lot of time asking people for money, so that we can host events like this, because they're important.
Fundraising, time spent fundraising.
Yes.
Do you have any questions? We don't exactly make any games or anything in the workshops, but through our resource guide list, there are actually a few places on the resource guide that get you involved with coding, and I know there's at least one location that does video games as a workshop. So definitely check out our resource guide. Any other questions? Let's see. I don't think we've heard from Bobby yet. Bobby, what advice would you give a student that was interested in your career field?
In my career field, I would start off with community college, because they have a lot of, not only where you can build your way up to get into a four-year degree, but as you're walking through, you can get a certificate, which then can get you into the door of working at a company, because you have a skill set of working in a lab, like using pipettes, how to do certain calculations, and you know, things that we use it day to day that they teach. Like at Shoreline, they have a biotech certificate program, and it's like a 10-month program. And while you're doing that program, you're also getting your associate's degree, and you can transfer that over to UW or any other four-year school. And when you're done with the 10-week certificate program, part of that program is them helping you build your resume and getting you a network set up within the field. And there's like 100+ different labs within the Seattle area. So as you're building your resume and you're applying to all these jobs, you can have a part-time job and build your resume and get your four-year degree. And by the time you're done with your four-year degree, you have like a year or two of experience. And that is like, experience is like gold. And the resume shows people that you have what it takes to be in their lab. So that's where the route I would go. I would go through like a community college, because it's not as expensive as a traditional four-year college, and those 2 years transfer over. So it's beneficial.
Yeah, I guess I went the community college route first. Thank you, Bobby. That was a great answer. I think it would be also great if the participants knew how, or our student participants had an idea of how long everyone in the Q&A panel spends kind of a week working. So I'll just go down the list, and if you guys can let us know what your typical hour workload is like on a week-to-week basis, or if that changes, you can let us know that too. So we can start with Reese.
Are you asking how many hours a week I work? Like, it's not uncommon for people who do what I do to work 60 or 70 hours a week, but we are usually all salary. And I think most people do that without even thinking about it, really. It's not something that's someone asks of you, really, but you kind of have to be super into it to do it for a long time.
Does it feel like 60 to 70 hours a week?
Yeah, sometimes. It's not usual.
Yeah, I think research careers just tend to trend towards overtime, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Same thing as Reese, it's typically like it really depends on manufacturing and what's going on, because sometimes there's a lot, there might be like a product that we're making a lot of, or there might be for like commercial, commercial is for like the world, and you're making a lot of product for the world. And then there's other times when there's like clinical trial drugs that we're making, and it's only like a 1 or 2 time, like 1 or 2 months you're doing that, and it'll be busy for like maybe a month of that. So I would say typically when it's like just clinical trial stuff going on, which there'll be like half the year, it's like 40 to 60. But whenever you're doing commercial, you're looking around 60 to 80 a week. And that's not just all like at the office, like on the floor in the manufacturing plant. Like you'll do your 8 to 10 hours on the plant floor, then you'll go home, have your dinner, hang out with your family, and you're back on your computer and you're working until like you go to bed and you just get up and go do it again. But that's the typical like heavy week.
Thank you, Bobby. We can come back to this question. Looks like Elijah, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question is, how long does it take to make it?
Like a video game? I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to that question.
Wait, what was the question? How long does it take to make a video game? Did I get that right? Did I understand that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a coder. It depends on the game, right? And the gaming platform. Like in Roblox, you can practice some coding and they can you can make games on top of it. I would say at a baseline, if you're starting from a good platform and you already know what you're doing, you could do something basic in like a month of working on it little by little. When there's professionals who are working on games, it might be a 6-month to a 2-year project. And then when they're done, it's like each update might be less time once they've got the baseline of code going. So then I would say for you as a kid, like as a teenager, like Roblox is a great place to explore. And then you're starting at a baseline platform. And then from there you could build it. So then, in probably 10 different times of sitting down and tinkering with it after you do a tutorial, you could create something that was interesting to you. It takes a little while though. These are not like coding is not necessarily a short project, but is good platforms that help you make things faster than if you were just starting from scratch.
I think we have time for a couple more questions before we need to do the exit survey.
Thank you, Adrian. If there isn't any questions in the chat or anybody raising a hand, I would love to know if COVID has changed your job position in a significant way moving forward. I assume everyone had, some at-home time, but has it affected how your job is going to look moving forward, especially as we get back to, normalcy? Does that change really for anyone? Like I do some nannying, and that's more in person, but my research has been, pretty much all online. And I don't know if and when that will change, especially the research that I do in particular. So curious if that's happened for anyone else. Anyone on your head?
Well, my position that I'm in kind of requires, or it doesn't require, but it's really helpful to be physically present with the systems that you're working on. But as I found out last year, you can do a lot of writing from home or remotely, and then check it when you actually get to be there in person.
And as we move forward, do you expect to be home more than you were?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
As we move, or I guess move back to, as we get back to normal, whatever normal is going to look like, do you think that you'll be home more than you were before?
Oh, no, probably not. Probably not. So the thing about contracting is that since you're not really an employee, you're not quite beholden to the same rules, I guess, as full-time employees. So they'll, I mean, the projects kind of have to get done. They have pretty tight timelines. So you're essentially always going to be an essential worker, and they're always going to make you come in for the most part.
That makes sense. Do we have time for one more, Adrian? Or
Yeah, we could probably do one more and then do the exit survey.
okay. Bethany, I would love to know, what was the most important thing that you gained out of high school that you would say has helped you today?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think what I learned in high school was how you set a goal, make a plan, and accomplish what you need. So in high school, when I entered high school, my goal was to get a full scholarship, a full academic scholarship, so that my parents would not have to pay for my college. I had just watched them figure out paying for their own graduate school. And as a kid, I didn't want to burden them right after they finished paying for their own schooling. And then I went on to do that, to understand what it takes to be a top student, what it takes to be a student that people pick for scholarships, what it takes to be a student that universities want, which is not just good grades, but you need to participate in activities, and you need to be a volunteer and be a well-rounded person. And I did a lot of late nights, and it was pretty crazy. And I got like all A's, and it was at the expense of my health, of my sleeping. And at the end, what I learned was that I can set my mind to something and I can get it. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room to get an award for smartness, basically. And I also learned that some sacrifices are too great, and that it's important to circle back to the balance, to your happiness, to your health. And I took that with me, the concept of setting goals and making a plan and then doing your best to stick to it, and the concept of nurturing your self-care and your personal health as a part of balancing those things. So yeah, that would be what I'd say I learned. I did when I was 12, my parents put me in this speed reading class. That year I took two amazing classes, speed reading and meditation. The speed reading was a speed reading and study skills class, and it was like 3 months. Wasn't that hard, a couple times a week. I still use those skills to this day, and most of the time around people, I am the fastest reader in the room, and it has really, really served me. The meditation also, I am 47 years old, I am still meditating. And so those are two, if I say hardcore skills, go get it. Go take a speed reading class. It is well worth it. Do it in your summer, it's worth it. And the other is meditation. And you don't even have to go pay for a class anymore. Just look online and practice it on YouTube. Now I use YouTube. I don't even use the same kind of meditation I used to. And those two things were super, super useful that I still use forever after.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Great response. Okay, my computer's getting a little hot. Alrighty, so thank you to our panelists. Excellent answers all around. Before the exit survey, I wanted to make a quick note that if you're interested in having a mentor, let us know in the survey and we'll match you. And then we'll have your mentors reach out to you via email. So our exit survey is down here. Adrian, can you put it in the chat? It should, hopefully it'll be a clickable link, but if not, just copy and paste into your browser. Make sure it's all under case. Let's see. So for that $25 Amazon gift card, after completing the workshop, we'll do this survey and you should get your $25. And also to be matched with mentors, please use the link. The survey really only takes a few minutes. Please, make sure it's all lowercase. Once you see the confirmation on the screen, then you're all done. You can go ahead and exit the meeting, but make sure that you put your accurate email in there so we can match it up with the attendance and get you your gift card. Let's see. And yeah, once you see the confirmation screen, you can go ahead and exit the meeting. Don't forget to check out steamdiscoveryproject.org for more workshops. We have them every Wednesday through June 16th. The survey link is also posted online and also our resource guide. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for your questions and being such great participants. Thank you again to our guest speakers and our panelists.